All right, we got a smorgasbord of things today.
Yeah. Walked in, not knowing what we were going to talk about. Now we have like 14 things.
I don't know if we've ever said that to the listeners before, that sometimes we don't actually know until 30 seconds before recording.
Yeah. Usually it's just what's going on around us, I guess.
But imagine we tried to do that in like episode 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Come up with a plan beforehand.
Be 60 minutes of 2 potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always embarrassing that our most listened to episode is episode 1 when we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, well. Not that we know what we're doing now, but...
Maybe we should delete the first couple and then switch all the episode numbers to make us look good.
Yeah. That's all right. Got to start. Just got to start it, I guess.
Yeah, we can't.
That's what we did. We just jumped into it. You guys are going to be listening to this the day before...
The last?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Day before the last open workout gets announced. If we got our weeks right. So I guess we can kind of start there, perhaps.
Right.
So as everyone who's doing the open knows, it doesn't really mean anything. And that, I know sometimes when I say it, people are like, well, why push people to sign up? Why encourage people to do the workouts? Why make it such a critical part to the whole year's plan at the gym? And that's simply because it's fun. And that is hopefully the focus that most people are taking. I think for me, in terms of like the general like feel of the gym, this year is by far the healthiest, and I'm using like little quotations, the healthiest feel in the gym. And like I've had the best conversations with people this year compared to any other year, just with where they're at and why they're doing the open and little wins that people are getting, and very few conversations about people overstressing themselves about their open performance or anything like that.
Do you think that has anything to do with the new format, or more so just because people, you know, it's another year, people have more experience, they're better at skills, better at movements, and are just, I guess, overall better able to deal with the stress?
I think so.
Or maybe a bit of both.
Yeah, both for sure. I think it really comes down to our approach of how we're communicating about the open as well. I think that's definitely... I mean, we get better. It seems like every event that goes on at the gym, and every year the Open comes around, or the Winter Classic comes around, or you know, Suns Out, Guns Out, all of our like intramural events and things like that. They seem to get better every single year as we just get more organized and better systems in place and things like that, just to keep everyone a little bit more at ease and have a little bit more of a educated approach to things, because it's hard for people to have any sense of how to approach any of these things without us actually communicating to them about that and doing it as many times in as many ways as we possibly can.
Right.
And I think we did a better job talking about the open earlier on this year, which allowed a lot of conversations to happen between members about it, and then between coaches and members, and between coaches as a group, and meeting as a coaches group to talk about how we were going to approach the open, and the conversations about scaling in RX and Friday Night Lights and all those things. So I think it was just kind of, everything just seems to come together, and the more educated and prepared people feel, the less stressful it is. So I think that went better. Mm-hmm. I think there's always something that can be done better, but at least we're going in the right direction for that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how the programming is going to change in the coming weeks or days even? Yeah,
days for sure. You'll probably start noticing changes this week. If you're listening to this episode in that 19.5 week, you'll notice some changes starting to happen already. Like this week is going to look a lot different than the last 4 weeks throughout the Open. It's going to be a lot less focus on intensity and things like that. And we're really going to be shifting gears back to our regular scheduled program, I guess we call it. which is writing a competition prep phase for a group of people is interesting, to say the least, because you have so many different levels, and for me, knowing that isn't the best approach. And what I mean by that is not that doing the open is wrong or running a competition prep phase for a group is wrong. It's just that the best approach for somebody to prep for anything is to do that one-on-one with a coach and have it happen over years,
right?
Not happen over weeks. So that's kind of it's a battle that I have internally every single year when we're coming up to the open. But I just really try to do my best to keep the programming as balanced as possible. And at the same time allow people to build up some sort of prerequisite intensity and volume so that when they approach those open workouts, they don't get crushed. I mean, they're always hard, but there's a difference between getting actually crushed by a workout and having it completely destroy you in a bad way, right? Like injury or complete burnout, self-esteem wise, right? Just beat you down from an emotional level and things like that. Like that's kind of the goal of the competition prep phase, is to get people ready for that. But it's nice to be able to get back to what I know is best for a fitness program. Knowing that there's obviously a massive difference between training for performance and training for fitness and just overall wellness. And at CrossFit gyms, the lines also always kind of get blurred because we use language like calling our members athletes and basing a lot of, every single program and every single cycle of programming has some sort of test at the end. So we use the open as a test, but is it a good test of fitness? It's a good test of CrossFit. If we're talking about CrossFit as a sport, it's a great test of CrossFit and who's the best at CrossFit, but it's not a test of fitness or health.
Right.
You can't say that it is, and anyone says that it does, you're just so deep into the Kool-Aid, like they're swimming in it, because they're just not able to separate themselves from, okay, what's a health and fitness program? What's a strength conditioning program for? That's a very abstract thing too, because a lot of people, if you ask them why they exercise, they have no idea. They just give you a random answer like, to live a healthy, active life. It's like, that's okay. That doesn't really tell the whole story. Right? Like, it sounds good, but that's not actually a reason. And I have a hard time making this make sense with words, but the only thing that I can compare it to is like somebody trying to define success for them, right? You're going to get different answers from everyone. Somebody's going to say happiness, somebody's going to say wealth, somebody's going to say family, and it's usually like these preconceived things that people are just like grasping at straws. This sounds good. Oh, this makes me sound like a nice person, and then you just say that, and that's what success is for you. When really it's such a hard thing to define. It's really difficult. But back to the actual thing that we're talking about. We're talking about difference between performance and health training. So for the last 2 microcycles that the gym has gone through, the focus has been preparing us as best as possible for an unknown and unknowable test that is the CrossFit Open, because we're an affiliate and it's important to us to be part of that global community. Now, you guys all know how you feel right now, being week 5 of the Open. This isn't how you want to feel all the time. The purpose of a strength conditioning program for general wellness and health is to allow you to function the best you can every day. So like have libido, have an appetite. You shouldn't need unnecessary recovery practices to get from session A to session B. Like you shouldn't have to hook yourself up to a TENS machine or have an ice bath or rock a couple aspirins or whatever your preferred NSAID is.
These are all performance measures.
Right? Like these things should not be happening. You should not have a feeling of I can't eat for a day, like I'm not hungry, and then you just purge on all this food and just go crazy. And these are all things that can happen throughout the open, because the open isn't for your health. It's not. And if you're an athlete, you're not doing CrossFit to be healthy. You're doing CrossFit for points. You're doing CrossFit for the leaderboard. And to treat yourself like an athlete, I don't want to hurt any feelings, so I'm coming from this from the nicest place possible, but like, to define yourself as an athlete but not live an athlete's life, it sounds nice, and I really like the aura around like calling everyone at the gym an athlete, but at the same time, that's not your job.
Yeah.
Right? Like, your job and your profession and your well-being, or your livelihood, I guess, not well-being, your livelihood isn't attached to the sport of CrossFit. This isn't how you make your money to support your family, to have a house, to, do the things that you do every single day. If you're an athlete, that's all you're doing, right? Think professional hockey player. They're at the rink, they got their morning skate, they eat, they're with the team, they're reviewing video. Like, if you're not doing that, like, you're just not. You're not a true athlete in what the word actually means. So we need to get you guys back into a program that's going to allow you to see progress in your strength and in your conditioning numbers, for sure, because we want to track our performance over time. But more importantly, we need to get back to a health focus. So that's going to come from more of a strength training approach, less CrossFit gymnastics, because it's just not sustainable to do all those kipping movements over and over and over again. Again, don't look at Instagram or Facebook or Netflix for your health information, right? Like, you're watching the best of the best do what they do. And then some low-end aerobic conditioning stuff, cyclical things, low impact, stuff that you can walk out of the gym. You're going to walk out of these sessions and be like, oh my God, I feel great. That's the goal. Yeah. Not, oh my God, I'm going to die, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to come back in for the next couple days.
I'm happy you brought all those things up, but there's definitely a couple points in there that I want to point out more than the others. So one, like, you mentioned the fact that you shouldn't feel beat up when you come out of a workout. That's something that a lot of people don't realize, I think. Like, if they don't feel like they're absolutely trashed at the end of a workout, they think that they, didn't get a lot out of it. Or they'll leave worse.
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah, even worse. Workout might end. They say, I feel too damn good to be done, and then they go back in and do some extra stuff until they're walking out of there all beat up.
Yeah.
So that's,
totally.
that was a very good point. Like, you should actually come out of it feeling more energized and refreshed than you were before. What else was I going to talk about? So I'm happy you brought up, like, the important distinction, obviously, between overall health and performing as an athlete, mainly because I think this is where, so someone who has, we'll call, like, an outsider's perspective, like someone who's never actually been a part of an affiliate gym, never done CrossFit before, I think this is where a lot of that misunderstanding comes from, like these opinions that, CrossFit's not good for your health, and so on and so forth. And we've talked about this in an episode before, but I think you just outlined there perfectly exactly why that belief exists. Well, it's because people who don't do CrossFit and are just kind of on the outside looking in, they don't know all this. They don't know what goes into the programming, say 75% of the year. They see the highlights on Instagram. So again, what are people going to post? They're not going to post the boring, monostructural aerobic work. They're going to see all the kipping gymnastics. They're going to see the high rep volumes in a short period of time. They're going to see highlights from regionals or the CrossFit Games or competitions. So that makes it easy to understand, I think, where the confusion comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why I'm happy you brought that up, because there is a clear difference. And so they don't see, like you said, all the strength work, the aerobic work that goes on for the rest of the year, all the work that actually is gearing towards just optimal health ultimately.
Yeah.
And I mean, so people forget that they sort of look at CrossFit with like a lens, and forget that, I mean, we can the example of hockey is easiest. I think a lot of us can relate to that. I mean, if you look at like playoffs in hockey, like that's not good for your body.
No,
that's terrible.
Those guys are coming out of there missing teeth.
Oh man, like, and even apart from the fact that you're, playing like every other day, you're clearly not sleeping as much. You're under a ton of extra stress from getting up for the game, trying to come down, the caffeine that you're consuming in between. And then, like you said, like all the extra injuries, not to mention guys are more likely to play through injuries.
Yeah.
They're probably, a lot of guys are going to be taking like some of those anti-inflammatories.
Right.
Even worse, I know in my playing days, a lot of guys would get like the shots of cortisone, like even in university, like those are terrible for you. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if a guy's like, these are guys in like their last years of competitive hockey trying to win a championship, so they're going to do whatever they can to keep playing.
Right, because it's about points and winning. It's
exactly.
not about being healthy.
Yeah, and so I think you can apply that to any sport. It's not just CrossFit. I mean, name your sport. That same principle applies. If you look at like the highest level of competition, it's not good for the body. No, of course not.
Right.
But CrossFit's about more than the competing. But I like how you made the distinction between CrossFit and then like quote unquote fitness and health.
Yeah, there's CrossFit as a sport, and then there's CrossFit as a training methodology.
Right.
And both can be done very poorly. So there's that. Not all two affiliates are the same. So I can't speak for every CrossFit affiliate. I can't speak for Greg Glassman. I can't speak for anyone involved in CrossFit Health now, because I mean, to be honest, I'm not really sure what that looks like yet. I haven't really seen too much on it and what that's going to look like, other than anti-freeze jugs deadlifts and getting up off the couch. I've seen those videos, but I haven't really sought out any more information on it. So I'm sure there's something out there to explain it, but
so sorry to interrupt. I have a quick question. This is more like your opinion than anything, but so there's been some new movements, some strict movements, which I think you definitely predicted like a few episodes back. There was obviously there's some kipping when it comes to toes to bar, but it's pretty minimal kipping, I would say, compared to other gymnastics. Do you think, I mean, I can't imagine they'll just go cold turkey on something like chest to bar or bar muscle ups, but do you think there's a chance with the new, kind of their new mindset on things?
I definitely think there's a chance for that to happen.
Or maybe strict chest to bar instead or something.
Yeah, the thing that's making this so weird is that they're trying to make a competition about health somehow. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to make the Open more healthy. But how do you make competition healthy? You can't. It's not a competition anymore.
Yeah.
Don't even bother. Right? Like from an athlete's perspective, it doesn't mean anything, or it's not going to actually push me to the ultimate level in the sport, then I'm not going to do it. So I like that so far the Open has been it's still maintaining the sport aspect. That last workout, 19.3, had strict handstand push-ups in it, but it was a great CrossFit test, right? And I'm going to keep calling it CrossFit test because it's not a fitness test. That's not what it is. It's a CrossFit test. It's a sport. It's a specific test for that sport as a qualifying process for the next level of competition. That's what the Open is. Yeah, it's an open registration for people all across the world to do it, but at the end of the day, what it's set up for is to separate the top athletes in the world from the mediocre athletes in the world, from the weekend warriors of the world, from the I just started this people in the world, right? That's what it does, and that's what the leaderboard shows every single year. So I think they'll still be in there for the Open. I think there will be for sure. Do I think that's right or wrong? I have no idea anymore, right? Because for the sport, yes, it is. But for the health, again, like there is no such thing as healthy competition. Like you can
Right.
pretend if it's a healthy competition for you, you're not competing. You're there as a participant. You're not a competitor at that event. And I think that's what a lot of us are in the Open. We're a participant. We're not competing, because if we were competing, we'd be jockeying for those qualifying spots, right? Those people are competing. We're not. We're participating. I think that's a big difference. Just yeah. I mean, the tough part. I keep saying the tough part. I don't even know if it's tough. The main push for all these sexy movements and the competitive edge and all the marketing that you see from like on Instagram and things like that of all the good looking stuff, all the best of the best doing their thing, is that it sells CrossFit. That's what it does. It sells CrossFit. It's like, if I were to post on our Instagram, get geared up for our 12-week strength focused program, and I just show people doing like dumbbell accessory work and
Squats with a 4-second tempo.
Yeah, tempoed squats, and people rowing and carrying and lunging and bounding and doing those sorts of things. It's not nearly as effective from a marketing standpoint, from like just a flash catch your eye standpoint, as watching somebody do butterfly ring muscle ups, right? Or handstand walking over an obstacle, or I don't know, you name it, snatching 200 pounds, whatever it is. It's just, it doesn't have the same sort of excitement to it, but that's what fitness is, and that's what sustainable long-term development of an individual comes from, is a solid strength foundation program and moving your body in a way that doesn't stress your system out, doesn't mess up your hormones, doesn't make you want to not eat for 48 hours, doesn't make you look white when you leave the gym, doesn't leave your hands bloody, right? Like all these things that are so sexy and attractive about CrossFit from like a marketing standpoint or from a outsider's perspective, like you said earlier, it's that's not it. That's not what it should be. That's I think the gyms that are going to last long term and have people be happy and healthy are the gyms that are able to educate people as to why they're doing that stuff and not doing Fran in June, right, in the middle of the summer, or like the Filthy 50 program just randomly. I'm just going to, here you go die. High five each other,
which we've talked about before, which
it
seems like definitely unfortunately goes on.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, that's the direction that we're going, because I know that I mean, look at this is a whole different fitness genre, I guess, but like bodybuilding and weightlifting and strongman, like those things have been around for a long time. They've been around for a lot longer than CrossFit. And what's it go back to all the time is, outside of the sport of those things, is just a balanced program of strength and conditioning. So like bodybuilding, they do all their strict compound movements or isolation movements. Or for all you CrossFit people, the functional bodybuilding, it's not a new concept. Just Marcus Philly did an amazing job of making
twisting it really.
Making it accessible for people. He created an amazing platform with it and made it a really incredible thing. He did an awesome job with it, but it's not a new concept. What he did is he took it and he packaged it in a way that was accessible for a lot of people, made a lot of sense, and then you see people switching from their general CrossFit programming to his. Why? Because his whole thing is feel good, look good. And for the majority of people that come into any sort of gym, that's what they're searching for. They're searching for the coach to help balance out their energy, because we can't give somebody energy unless you're going to sneak caffeine pills into their water when they come in, right? Like, we're not giving them any energy. All we're trying to do is balance that out and make them look good, whatever that means to them. That's why people come to the gym.
Well, and I like how he designed that from his own experience. He designed it from his own experience, which was exactly what we just talked about. Like basically just too much competing, not enough, like you said, health and fitness, not enough taking care of the body. And he did that for years and years and years. And from his personal stories, he talked about a lot of those things, just feeling beat up, no energy, didn't feel like himself, and just took its toll over time. And then he kind of adapted this approach. And so I like that part about it as well. It's not just that awesome. He didn't just make it up out of thin air. It was actually his own experience that was the motivating factor behind it.
Yeah. And probably when he was at the peak of his career was when the volume thing was big. Like everyone was trying to do more than the next person.
Right.
More. I need to train more. If I'm not training, I'm not getting better. All these things, and just people got burnt out. Like some people disappeared altogether. The people that are still around from that time are the people that were eventually able to figure it out and balance things out a little bit more and train a little bit smarter. And that's just maturity as an athlete for them. It came around, and they got more comfortable in their abilities. But then that brings up the questions like, well, is that extra volume what made them so good, right? Like it's really hard. It's really difficult to try to navigate that.
There's also everything, huge individuality component.
Right.
Like someone like Pat Vellner, he's always coming out and saying like openly, the majority of the year he's in the gym once a day. Mm-hmm. He's pretty good for training once a day.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But again, like can another big name athlete get away with just doing that? Who knows? Some people are probably better at dealing with the extra volume than others. Well, undoubtedly they are, but I guess it's just all about finding kind of your optimal level, really. Yeah,
and being patient and allow yourself to actually find that optimal level as you go through things. The patience is hard, but that's what shows if you're a mature athlete or not. I struggle with that with some of the athletes that I coach now. It's like, I need to do more. I'm adding in this, I'm adding in that, and I'm just like, you can tell them whatever you want. They have their mind made up already. I'm not gonna, and it doesn't matter how much they trust my opinion. I mean, they're asking me about it, so obviously they care about my opinion. Whether they want it or not, I'm not sure. But I can only do so much for that person. It's gonna take them to just kind of grow up a little bit as an athlete, like not to be too harsh, but it's part of the process that they're going through, and it's their journey, it's their process. You gotta let that happen, and be honest with, and it's not just 1, 2. It happen. I feel like every person goes through it at some point in their, if they want to take CrossFit seriously as a sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, oh, I need to do more. I need to come in on Sunday and do this extra workout. Like, why? How do you feel today on Monday approaching your first day of training for the week, for that week block? Oh, you can't hit your numbers? Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Like, I don't feel bad for you. What do you want from me? I can't do anything for you. You didn't listen to me in the first place, which is fine. You got to learn from your experience too.
I think any athlete who can actually learn that early on at a younger age, those are going to be the better athletes long term, obviously.
It's a huge advantage for them.
Yeah, because it's hard to, and we've talked about this before, it's hard to develop that mindset when you're so young, and I mean, again, if we would have had this conversation when we were 18, 19 years old, we'd probably be talking about how and why you should train 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Seriously,
sure.
I mean.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I would have been coming at it from, for sure. I think like patience is a big thing it's usually relative to training age. Like if you talk to anybody who's been doing CrossFit for 8 to 10 years compared to somebody who's been doing CrossFit for less than 5, it's a completely different conversation. 8 to 10, they got it figured out by now. Otherwise, it wouldn't still be in the sport. The people under 5 years, so it's still relatively new, and their training age is so low, and they're seeing improvements left, right, and center. They just want to keep getting it, and there's, I don't know, there's just no patience involved in that. That's why I really like martial arts as a sport. Any martial art, doesn't matter, but following some sort of a belt system, like you really learn patience. You can't, if you go to a good school or academy or dojo or whatever you're at, whoever it is in charge isn't just going to be passing out belts like lollipops. You got to go through the whole process in order to get there. There's a time component to each belt. There's a skill component to each belt, and you really learn how to be patient through the process, because if you're chasing a belt or you're chasing the next level and you go there too soon, you get your ass beat.
Yeah.
Like, actually physically, not just like, oh, I'm feeling tired today. Like, you actually get beat up. That puts you back in your place pretty quick.
Do they have like a minimum amount of time that you have to spend at each belt?
Most disciplines do. Yeah, like a white belt's usually 6 months to a year.
Okay,
and then
so
after that, it's usually
that window.
Yeah, some disciplines have fewer belts, so you might find yourself at one belt for like 5 years,
right? With
no progression. And I got my finger quotes out again. No progression, because if you're looking at it from only a reward side,
yeah,
but you learn so many things in between, and then it teaches you just to enjoy the process a little bit more and understand that there's always something better that you can do. Like, yeah, you have a technique, but can you do it better? The answer is always going to be yes.
Yeah.
Right? So relating it to CrossFit, like, oh, I've done a bar muscle up. It's like, okay, cool. Do you understand the movement? Can you break it down into its parts? Do you understand the shapes? Do you understand the pressure? Right? Like, in terms of pushing and pulling on the pull-up bar, hand position. Do you understand how to cycle the movement? What grips do you use? Right? How much chalk? All these little details, like they all come into play, and the people that are at the top of that sport have all those they understand every single piece of it. They're not winging it. There's no winging it at all. It's like, I hope to get there and then see what happens, which was a conversation a lot last week. For most people, it's like, oh, if I can just get to the wall and then see what happens. That's where a lot of people are at, and that's cool. But understand that if that came out of your mouth or was in your head at all, there's a lot of mastery left for you in that skill itself before we even worry about being a CrossFit athlete.
That's why I like the sounds of this functional fitness, because it seems to actually identify those steps and levels a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
Like the CrossFit thing, like you could hypothetically get, just to use the example that you just used, you could hypothetically get 1 bar muscle up. You could get 10 or 20 bar muscle ups, but without actually like hitting all those intermediate steps, if you will.
Right.
So like, as an example, you could kind of climb that ladder, get relatively high by skipping all these steps, and then of course it's going to catch up to you and hit you later on.
Right.
When you kind of stall, or maybe you get injured or hit a wall in progress, whatever. Whereas this other, like the functional fitness, it seems like even just with like their standards that they have, the standards never change. It's level across the board, whether you're in country A, country B. This is the number you have to hit. If you hit that, you progress to level 2 type thing.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I like about that. And I think even from like this mindset we've been talking about, like understanding where you are in terms of like what level you're at, what your progression is. I think especially with young athletes, it could help a lot with that as well. So maybe even promote more long-term health.
Yeah, there's a lot more opportunity for educating people if you go slower.
Right.
It's definitely slows the process down. I love it. By the sounds of things, I think we mentioned it a little bit before, but kind of like a swimming lesson sort of approach, or a hockey level sort of approach. Like, are you at a atom rep level or A level, or are you at atom rec level, or like a house league sort of level? And how can we get this kid from where they're at to the next level if they put in the commitments needed to do that? And then swimming lessons, you wouldn't start on like level 12 where it's whatever you gotta do. I don't know. I didn't do swimming lessons, but I don't know.
I forget what they're called. Yeah.
Dive off a 12-foot platform. I don't think that's a thing, but say it's that, and you're talking to somebody who isn't even comfortable holding their breath underwater. It's like, well, we should probably teach them how to do that first,
right,
before we have them doing that. But so many times people see the platform and they're like, oh, and they see people jumping off it. They're like, oh, that's really cool. I want to do that. And then you just skip it and then they end up drowning.
Long story short.
They're just going to drown. I guess.
This is absolutely a side story and totally unrelated, but so public pool in Mitchell, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, big thing to do growing up. So of course you also always hear stories of like what people did in the past. And typically like in a small town, people used to quote unquote like get away with more things back in the day, or maybe would do things that were a little bit more extreme than we would do as kids. Mm-hmm. So one story I remember hearing was there was I don't know how tall the high dive would have been, probably like 10, 12 feet, pretty high. Mm-hmm. Story of a young kid who took his bike in. I don't know how we got it in there, carried it up the ladder, rode his bike off the high dive into the deep end.
Awesome.
Just stuff like that. You just don't see that anymore.
No,
it's great.
It's not as much fun anymore.
Sure, he's okay. You know, he didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Pretty funny to see.
That's awesome.
I understand why they don't want people to do it, but
yeah,
I don't know. You need stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's totally unrelated, but
just had to bring that Mitchell, up. Things that happen.
Smuggling the bike in.
That's awesome. You had some things about, where did this come up? What were we talking about? Like the constant beatdown from sport, I guess.
Yeah. And I think we had a longer episode on this a little ways back, where we talked a little bit about like the overtraining, why it's not good to just constantly beat yourself into the ground. We talked about a few of the kind of theories as to what's actually going on in the body and brain when that's happening. Mm-hmm. Yes, I would recommend people go back and listen to that if you haven't already. I don't know what number it was. I think it was called something like the neurophysiology of overtraining or something like that.
Yeah.
But
like overreaching and things like that.
Yeah, but I mean, if you didn't hear that one, there's reasons why it's not good to just constantly train your face off and constantly compete, as we discussed. It just comes down to you have to look at the stress responses that are actually happening when you go through a tough training session, essentially. So you have, and I actually wrote something about this today on Instagram. If someone were to look at the biomarkers, so if they were to do a blood test or a saliva test or something like that of someone who just went through a hard training session, even a say post-open workout, 19.2 would be a good example. That was all the squat cleans, right?
Right, yeah. Yeah.
If someone were to look at biomarkers of someone after that or the next day, they would look like an absolute mess. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't know, so if all they had was this vial of, whatever they were looking at, say they were looking at blood, if that's all they had and they didn't have any information about who the individual was, what their overall health was, what they did beforehand, they'd probably look at this and go oh my God, this person needs to make some serious changes. They're on the verge of some serious illness. Because you'll have this massive response in inflammation. So pro-inflammation, you're going to have cytokines like TNF-alpha, IL-6 floating around. You're going to have a ton of oxidative stress. So this is the reactive oxygen species we've talked about. This is why it's not good or not optimal at least to take a bunch of antioxidants after a training session. Because again, you need that response is for a reason. You need that in place for your body to adapt and then ultimately become stronger, faster, healthier. You'd have breakdowns of proteins because you have tiny little micro tears in your muscles. So these are releasing damaged proteins. You're going to have upregulation of liver enzymes because you need to process all these toxic waste materials that you create during the training session. So there's all these things going on that also you would actually see like in someone who's on the verge of disease or even has some type of illness or is just not healthy in general. So it's interesting because, like, in terms of just looking at those markers, like there's not a lot of difference, right? It's pretty interesting
between post high intensity training session and
someone who's unhealthy.
Sick.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys
so
are getting that. That's the main point here. So you take a blood sample from someone who just had a really hard session. It's intense for them, whatever that means, right? The workout was written in a way that they were able to achieve a really high intensity. You compare that person's blood sample to somebody who is unwell or on the sickness end of the wellness spectrum, and they would be similar.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that kind of tells a story right there. Just imagine now if you are, if you're not recovering, if you're doing that training session several times a day, 7 days a week, well, then you're slowly going to progress towards illness. And this is why, quite simply, why you can't train the way you would during a quote-unquote competitive season all year round. Like, take the games athletes, for example. The way they train, like, a month or two leading up to the games is absolutely insane. Like, you could not sustain that all year round. Something would give, whether it be, I don't know, it could be anything. Like, whether it be, like an injury to a shoulder, a knee, a back, something like that. Whether it be, I don't know, something a little bit more serious where you progress towards that quote-unquote adrenal fatigue we talked about, which is also then linked to things like anxiety, stress, depression, and so on, because all these mechanisms feed into the brain as well. It could be a number of things, but the point is, like, you just can't do it. And to be honest, if you want to be a top-level athlete, it's just stupid to do that anyways.
Right.
But I get...
Even the top of the top don't do that.
Exactly. But again, we see all the stuff on Instagram. We see the sexy stuff in social media. So I get why. It's easy to appreciate why people get this mindset, this understanding. I was there once before too. I remember the days as a young kid, maybe 18, 19, or even a little bit older. You go on the internet, you find this program that's, 2-a-day training session. Go in the morning and crush a bunch of squats, go back later in the day, maybe crush legs again, do some extra conditioning. Oh, this sounds great. Like, I'm going to get jacked up for summer. But it just, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Now, to drive another point home, like when you were, say, 18, 19, how far into your strength conditioning or fitness journey were you?
Pretty early on. Like, I would say I started going to the gym on a semi-regular basis when I was like 16 or 17. I'm not saying it was like a good training program that I was doing, but and I mean, not to mention, like, when I was that age, I would play hockey 8 months of the year, and then when I'm not playing hockey at school, I'm playing rugby, soccer, track and field. So, like, I definitely had a little bit of a base to begin with, for sure.
Right.
But even then, like, if you're just starting into the gym lifting weights, that's a completely different stimulus. Even if you think you're a fit athlete, which I thought I was, you just still can't handle something like that.
Right.
Like the 2-a-day, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, like the military training or whatever. Like, you get healthier and stronger and faster when you're resting.
Right.
When you're eating.
Yeah. And you made those choices when your training age was like 0.
Yeah.
Like, you were kind of dabbling in and out, but I wouldn't call that, you weren't actually following any sort of program consistently. So when you're an immature athlete like that, you get excited about everything, right? You constantly find yourself on the internet looking up different programs and, oh, well, this person's doing that thing, so I need to be doing that. And that comes from, and I did the same thing. So fortunately, when I got into the CrossFit world, I had a one-on-one coach right from the start.
Nice.
Which was, I'm really happy that ended up happening for multiple reasons. Outside of just athletic development, but personal development and professional development. Like, that individual helped me out so much through the whole thing. but having direction goes a long way. And that's what we try to provide at the gym, where it gets off track is when people take what we're doing and they're like, I want to do more because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And I can translate that into, I want to do more because I'm insecure in my abilities to perform in whatever it is that I want to perform in. Or I'm insecure for whatever reason. It's an insecurity thing. It's an immaturity thing, and that's what it comes from.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be a mean person, because I went through the exact same things and I understand what those feelings are like, and you don't even realize you're doing it when you're doing it. That's not your intention. Your intention isn't like, well, I'm trying to compensate for all of these things. It's just like you're excited and you want to do all this stuff, but what ended up happening to you?
Oh, I had a back injury like at a very young age.
Right.
Like, I don't know when my first one was. I was probably like, say 22, 23, something like that. And I've mentioned this before on the show. Like, these were the times when there was a good chunk of like those times in my life when I would train like at least 6 days a week. Like, I was not training anything less than 6 days a week, put it that way. So
yeah, and some days multiple times.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm pretty convinced at this stage of my life that definitely led to some injuries, mainly in the back.
Yeah.
And I'm dealing with another one right now after being smart about training. So
right.
I mean,
so
I'm still kind of paying for it a little bit, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I'm over it. Like, it's just, these are the cards I was dealt, so I'm going to play them to my best of my abilities. That's just the way it is. Like, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. But yeah, I mean, you have to be smart about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, just think about it like a splash park, those big ass buckets that slowly fill up with water.
Yeah.
And then when it's about to dump over,
yeah.
all the kids run underneath it and just demos them.
One. I like that.
So that's you, right? Like,
yeah.
And that was me, and that was you at that point in time, and that's a lot of people right now, especially if they're really early on in their CrossFit journey or fitness journey in general, whatever it is just that excitement. Like, your body like can kind of bounce back and adapt and recover,
sure.
Especially early on, to a lot of shitty stuff that you do to it. It's like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. But it gets to a point where you overflow the bucket.
Yeah.
It dumps out, and the consequences of that can be detrimental to your health for the rest of your life, or have some sort of an impact to that forever, because you just weren't willing to focus on the things that are important in your fitness program.
Yeah. So, like, I'm at the point now, like, I've already accepted internally, like, I'll probably never test a 1-rep max deadlift again in my life, because it's like, what's the point? Like, who cares? Risk versus reward. Mm-hmm. You get absolutely you do not get stronger whatsoever when you're actually finding out what that max is and testing that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, back injury, like, that's, if you're doing a heavy deadlift, that's probably the worst thing to do for it.
Right.
That's not to say I'm never going to deadlift again. Even deadlift heavy, I hope to and fully plan to, like, maybe even in some competitions. Mm-hmm. Sure, pull some deadlifts up if it comes up in a competition for a bunch of reps, whatever. But that's like that's
competition.
That's like a one-off.
Right. That's not how you're going to train.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, again, like, the body wants to heal. I seen a good post from, what's his name? With WOD Prep, the movement doctor.
Oh, CJ.
Yeah.
CJ
so he had a great post about this the other day. I read it like shortly after I hurt my back. It kind of helped a lot, like, personally, actually hearing this from him. So if he's listening, thank you. But it was about, like, he himself had a injury in a competition, his back, from a heavy snatch or something like that. And then he just kind of wrote up this post, like, hey, you have to remember, like, the body wants to recover. Like, it is going to recover. It's not going to be like this. Like, movement helps. Mm-hmm. I think he was even doing, like, he might have been doing, like, some semi-heavy-ish, goblet squats, like, a couple days later, which is, like, I think counterintuitive to what I guess the general public would think. They just think, like, complete rest.
Right, and pain is bad.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not always the case.
That's the key there, yeah. And think, like, but you've said this before, so they'll identify with it, right?
Oh yeah,
That's
bad back.
yeah. So that's the dangers that can come from it. So it's, again, we say this a lot. It's perspective. So, but yeah, I think with any injury, that's a good thing to keep in mind and remember. Like, the body, again, it wants to heal itself. It has this amazing capacity to do so. You just have to support it, give it what it needs, and I mean, with time, it will do that. Just play it smart. Even something like, if I go and read about these things, so like disc injury, I used to think, like you've said before, like we talk about like shoulders or elbows, hips, whatever, just say like, worst case scenario in the future, I can replace that. Even discs now, it seems like there is ways to actually regenerate them, which is pretty mind-blowing. Again, I'm not saying like don't respect it. Like
Right.
I'm telling you right now, you have to respect it, because you can go to a pretty dark place with something like that. But I mean, again, it just comes back to that perspective, kind of having faith in the body, and being smart about it in your training in life.
Yeah, for sure. Your body wants to be healthy. It wants to be at that, that homeostasis, that equal balance. That's what it wants. We take it away from that all the time, and you even do that in training, right? You take yourself away from that that baseline, that balance, way away from it, right, to the point where you're talking about those blood samples would match somebody who's unwell. So how can you get it back to that point and then see some sort of an adaptation to bridge that gap for your next session, instead of just making it worse and worse and worse? Another topic on the whole training thing, it's like I get some questions like, oh, I got sore knees, like should I get knee sleeves? Or, oh, I get sore wrists when I snatch, should I get like wrist wraps or whatever? No, fix your shit. Okay, fix yourself. Don't band-aid that, because if it's like that now, like it's not going to go anywhere until you get to the root cause of that problem, and that's going to come from experimentation over time. It's definitely not going to come from rest. Resting's not going to do that. Like resting it as in like, so there's rest in training, so like taking a day off and letting your body recover, and then there's rest as in like immobilizing a joint for an extended period of time, like a month, 90 days, 6, like whatever happens. That's not the approach you want to take. We need to move
even if it's a real injury. Even if
it's a real injury, totally, absolutely. If it's a real injury, you need to move it like sooner than later. I mean, we're not talking about like complete ruptures of things and like breaking your leg in half. We're talking like you have an acute injury, some sort of tendinopathy or something like that. Like you need to get back on your horse, and you got to move yourself. And not only you need to move better, because there's a reason why those things are happening to you. And if you keep moving the way you're moving, it's going to be the same.
Well, and I think even like moving doesn't necessarily always mean moving where the injury is either.
That's right.
It means moving the body.
Get the blood going.
Yeah, so just so people are clear on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do some sort of passive range of motion things. If you're doing that, I always prefer like an active range of motion, because you at least have control over it. I know like CJ was big on this. When I injured my elbow, I went and consulted with him about what I should do, because like even like now, like I don't have any ligaments holding the medial side of my elbow in place. There's nothing there, and it's not going to be unless I get it surgically repaired. Like there's nothing on that medial side of my my right elbow. There's nothing. So it's like, am I just not going to do anything with that elbow, or am I going to do something to help manage that joint, like increase the integrity of the joint through like musculature
surrounding it,
right, things like that? And that's basically his advice was right away. It's like, well, you need to start doing bicep curls, tricep extensions, little wrist curls and rotations and things like that, and get the musculature in that area healed, because with the injury there was a lot of strains and tears and things like that. But B, long term, like if I want to be able to use this elbow for anything, when like thinking far beyond when CrossFit as a sport is a thing for me, or martial arts for a sport for me is done, like I got to be able to move this shit. So like if I just like immobilize it, or I ignore it and just alter my movements to like make it okay, like not locking out my elbow and things like that, it's not going to get any better. And same thing with your back. the day after you had your back injury, yeah, you were pissed off and you were sad about it. Like anyone, you go through that. You're a human being.
Yeah.
But you're at the gym. Like I saw you laying on your floor here and some Snapchats, like doing your breathing things. I saw you like at the gym. You're laying down on your back with your feet elevated. You're like trying to get some sort of blood flow to the area while also some sort of a decompression thing so that you can feel like you're normal again. It's like you got to actually do shit to get better.
Yeah. And it's definitely not always easy or the thing that you want to do.
No. But sulking on the couch doesn't get you any better either.
No. So yeah, we kind of went full circle there, but I don't know. They're all related, I would say.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it comes down to being smart with your training.
Yeah, I guess that could be just like the title for the whole episode. How to not train like a dumbass.
Yeah. I've really come to appreciate even more what people call, I don't really like the term, but like quote unquote strict work or accessory work.
Yeah.
I
gotta
just
call it something, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know, like the whole less is more thing when it comes to mostly with like the kipping gymnastics, like you mentioned, because, you know, regardless of what most people say, I think the bottom line is you simply can't, same thing with this, you simply can't do something like that on a daily basis, nor is it going to be beneficial.
Right.
So you just kind of have to think about, okay, how can you make this movement or this skill better without actually doing it?
Yeah.
In like a sustainable way.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So like
that was on the strict positions, the shapes, the
exactly.
positions, strengthening the joints that are used for those movements in those shapes.
Sexy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're at Westland and CrossFit, be ready for the non-sexy stuff. But maybe we can just think about it this way: we're gonna build up that muscle before the beach.
That's right.
Think about it that way. Functional bodybuilding. Let's make it sexy. Let's make it Marcus Philly style. So we'll just post a bunch of Marcus Philly videos of him with his shirt off. Veins popping, hair down. That seems to be the trick.
That's right. It's genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny to think about it that way. Like person A who does 0 kipping chest to bar pull-ups in a year, but does maybe they even do like some, what could they be doing? A bunch of hollow body holds, a bunch of lat pull downs, a bunch of strict pull-ups.
Yeah, strict hollow to arch.
Yeah, versus like person B who's maybe even doing a little bit of that, but they're still doing a ton of chest to bar pull-ups. That first person, they're probably going to beat the shit out of the second person at the end of the year.
I would say so.
In terms of like competition and a movement like that.
Yeah, for all the reasons that we talked about in this episode. 1, their joints are going to be healthier and stronger because they're focusing on those things. 2, their body's going to feel good because they're recovering properly and treating themselves right.
Yeah.
And then 3, they're focused on the foundational shapes of that movement, which is actually going to make you better at the movement. Doing shitty chest to bar for a year straight, doing them the same and never getting any better, it's like maybe you just need to take it back to the basics. And that's really what an off season, hand quotes are out again. We're essentially going into an off season at the gym because for the majority of the people that train at Westland and CrossFit, their in season or their competition time is the open, and that's it. Some people do one-off competitions on the weekend and stuff like that, but those are things that in terms of group class programming and what I can speak to, that's not a priority for that. That's not what it's set up for. If people choose to go off and do those things on their own, then all the power to them, but hopefully they're doing something and consulting with either myself or one of the other coaches at the gym to make sure that they're physically and mentally prepared for that. And that might involve going off of the group class programming for a week or so before that event, or more than that. But that's where it gets very individualized, and you have to place a person into a specific box. I can't give general advice on that stuff.
Nice. Well, we didn't really figure out what the episode was actually about until the last 10 minutes, but once we did, then we tied everything together.
Boom. That's good. And we thought it was going to be like a 20-minute episode. Here we are. Pushing the limits on this.
30.
All right, we got to shut her down.
Yep. Good luck in the last workout, I suppose.
Yeah, have fun. Get ready for some. We're going to build you back up.
Yep.
All right. Peace.
Cheers.